This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Welcome to the Glazov gang. This is the Stephen Coughlin moment. Yesterday, I went to a sneak preview of the movie 13 Hours, Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. The movie is a true-to-life movie of events that happened around the events of Benghazi on September 11th, 2012, and it focuses on the events on the ground as understood by those soldiers who were fighting the actual battle. As such, it doesn't go into the details of the background except to have some scenes that leave you aware that, of course, higher up forces and leaders were aware and not giving the go-ahead. You have to see pilots waiting at their F-16s to go in. You have to see the Marines waiting for the order to strike. And from there, it doesn't go much further. This is about the men on the ground. But, you know, there are certain things I think about this movie that you should take a look at. And the reason I want to talk about this is I want to stay just with the facts. I don't want to get political. And in this regard, I'd like to talk about an organization called Judicial Watch, which routinely makes Freedom of Information Act requests and goes to court to get documents. And there are things we found out about Benghazi that may help you fill in the blanks about why when the events of Benghazi were raging, when the ability to go in could have taken place, nothing happened. And I think first of all, what we have to take a look at is from a Freedom of Information Act document, we found that on the 13th of September 2012, the State Department put out a memo, the USG Outreach and Engagement Post-Benghazi Attack, where they made it clear that they were blaming all these events on the YouTube clip, The Life of Muhammad, I think it was called. And then they relied on their interfaith connections to put this word out. This memo was basically talking about what had transpired the day before on September 12th, where Rashad Hussain, a member of the State Department, reached out to the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, the second largest intergovernmental organization, second only to the United Nations. And the OIC came out and gave their condolences for the dead, but then blamed the event of Benghazi on the anti-Islamic film and violence. And then they created what we'll call the CVE, the Countering Violent Extremism, the CVE equivalency, where they said there was extremism on both sides. Extremism, the jihadis who attacked an embassy and killed people, and extremism in America, people who exercised their First Amendment rights to do what they were doing. But let's put that aside because we're going to ask, was this even the issue? So here we have it. On the 13th, we have a memo talking about actions taken on the 12th by the State Department doing interfaith outreach and reaching out to interfaith players and other organizations. And one of the groups is the OIC. And the next group was Rashad Hussain again reached out to Imam Majid, the president of the ISNA, Islamic Society in North America, a known member of the Muslim Brotherhood, a named entity on the explanatory memorandum, a document admitted into evidence in the Holy Land Foundation trial, identifying it as the Muslim Brotherhood. ISNA as well blamed the actions on the YouTube clip and went so far as to talk about how they had to work shoulder to shoulder with other faiths to help understand this issue. I want to say something. When you hear the Muslim Brotherhood, when you hear ISNA say shoulder to shoulder, that's code language for them to energize their interfaith operation and get other people to get on board. We saw this recently as well. Also on the 12th of September, MPAC came out, Muslim Public Affairs Council, and again, they blamed it on the YouTube clip, as did the Council on American Islamic Relations, CARE. So the events of Benghazi happened going through the night of September 11th into the 12th. The State Department coordinated with the OIC, an intergovernmental organization representing foreign heads of state, and the Muslim Brotherhood domestically on a narrative that blamed these activities on a YouTube clip. Now, I want to shift because we have those documents from Judicial Watch, but we have other documents from Judicial Watch that were released, Freedom of Information Act. And those documents make it very clear that the reporting coming from Benghazi when the attack happened made it clear that they were being attacked by terrorists, armed terrorists. There were no protests. There was a run on the embassy. The day of the attack, a British newspaper put out an article basically noting that Ayman Zawahiri called for action for revenge because al-Libi, the highest ranking Libyan in al-Qaeda in, I think, Afghanistan, was killed. It may have been Iraq. So we have al-Qaeda calling for revenge. We have reporting from Libya that shows that they were aware that al-Qaeda was active in the area and looking to do things. Why am I making this point? The Judicial Watch document makes it clear that when the State Department came up with a narrative to talk about this being a terrorist attack based on anger produced by this YouTube clip, they knew this was not true. They knew that what caused this was an al-Qaeda attack by Ansar al-Sharia, who actually claimed that they were doing it on the 12th, where there was notice that they would, where people knew that there was capability to do it. So how do you explain this? The facts on the ground, as this was carried on the news for days, weeks, and even years, the facts on the ground of Benghazi were completely overwritten by a narrative that sought to change the issue to something that fed into that literally actually called for the ratification of 1618, UN Resolution 1618, to make defamation of Islam a crime in every jurisdiction all over the world. So I just think it's really important to bring these points out. And I'd like to maybe give you a sense of a timeline for leading up to this. And this is not as far back as it goes, but I could produce a document that basically shows that the OIC says and claims and takes pride in the fact that they've been working on the countering violent extremism narrative for over 20 years. Now, why is that important? Because I think most people listening to this clip are just now coming to be aware that there's such a thing as a CVE. And that would be the first indicator that this is something new. And since we know that an entity that's a foreign entity has been working on for 20 years, we know it has non-US roots, not necessarily even European roots. So then in January 2008, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, under Judge Chertoff, under the Bush administration, produced a document called Words to Define Terrorist, Recommendations from American Muslims. And of course, we kind of got word that the American Muslims they relied on were Brotherhood Muslims, people associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. And that's where the whole movement to purge the language first came up. It took full bloom under the Obama administration, to be sure, but it was actually implemented under the Bush administration with this document. Then in 2008, we saw the FBI's official counterterror lexicon give its lexicon for terrorism, where no words about Islam were used. Then we saw under the Obama administration a CVE workshop, Countering Violent Extremism workshop, put on by the Department of Homeland Security, DHS, where key people who were invited to help establish the CVE protocols were Imam Majid, Dalia Mogahed, Al-Amari, Ali Bieri, people who we know have affiliations with, at least for some of these people on this list, the Muslim Brotherhood. So here we have it. As we look at this, I just like to point out that we need to start looking at, as we watch this movie 13 Hours, and we see that these people were there on the ground asking for support, where the things in the movie surrounding you make it clear there were people ready to go in. The troops on the ground were ready to go on right away. They show people on the airfield ready to go in. They were able to go in. We also have a Freedom of Information Act document that basically shows from the Judicial Watch that the forces were spinning up and getting ready to go. Orders were not given. I think it's important to just reiterate this and come to a conclusion that as you watch 13 Hours, Secret Soldiers of Benghazi, and I would recommend this movie, the externalities of the political part of it, cue yourself into that the day after this event, that the forces were not allowed to be sent in, that could have been sent in, that the State Department knew this was an al-Qaeda attack. When they turned around and immediately swapped out those facts for a narrative coordinated with the Brotherhood domestically and the OIC internationally that blamed this on a YouTube clip where we know that had nothing to do with the events. Thank you for watching. To support this show, go to the JamieGlazov.com and subscribe to Jamie Glazov on the YouTube channel. Take care.